What is up, mortals? It is Rennie here. And before we get into today's video, there's something I like to say. I like to let you all know that we have a merch store. Some of the items in it are only available for a limited amount of time. So, if you're interested, go into the description and check it out. Each purchase helps us make more content. Secondly, if this video hits 300 likes by the end of the week, we will continue this What If. Thirdly, if you guys didn't know, only 41.3% of you guys are subscribed to us. So please, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the story. In this What If, we will be continuing with part 4 of What If Tanjiro from Demon Slayer is in My Hero Academia. In the last episode, Tanjiro begins school at UA and does his quirk apprehension test. He later teams up with Yaoyorozu as the villain team against Kaminari and Jiro. Class 1A meets up at the USJ with the pro hero 13. Which causes Deku and several other students to start to get excited. Upon entering the USJ, 13 introduces the facility to the class. However, shortly after 13's introduction, the power suddenly gets cut off, and a black mist-like portal appears in the middle of the USJ, with several people walking out of it. Most notable of the bunch being a man with hands all over his body, a mist-like person, and a bird-faced person with a visible brain. Aizawa tells the class to stay back as those were real villains and they were getting attacked. Before leaving, he orders 13 to protect the students while he goes to engage the villains. Aizawa makes quick work of several of the weaker villains while the class attempts to evacuate the facility. However, before they could get out, the mist-like villain appears before them, blocking their path. The villain introduces their group to be the League of Villains and tells the students of their purpose to kill All Might. As the villain finishes speaking, Bakugo and Kirishima charge at the villain, attempting to attack him to no avail. The villain scatters Class 1A around the facility, with Deku, Tsuyu, and Tanjiro ending up in the shipwreck zone. Upon getting warped into the shipwreck zone and falling into the water, Tanjiro attempts to swim to the surface, but gets attacked by a villain. He was not able to activate his quirk due to him not being able to breathe underwater. Tanjiro uses his binding cloth to tie up the villain before he gets saved by Tsuyu and Deku, who pulls him out of the water and onto the ship. On the ship, Tanjiro, Deku, and Tsuyu inform each other about their quirks, strengths, and weaknesses before coming up with a strategy. Upon coming up with a plan, Tanjiro jumps towards the water. Right as he touches the water, he yells, "Water breathing! Sixth form! Whirlpool!" As he begins to spin and form a giant whirlpool, Deku then throws Tsuyu off the boat, which Tsuyu then catches Deku with her tongue. Upon seeing this, Tanjiro leaps up and uses his binding cloth to grab a hold of Tsuyu, propelling himself towards her. After passing Tsuyu, Tanjiro uses the binding cloth to slingshot Tsuyu towards the ground outside the shipwreck zone, before propelling himself towards her once more, landing on dry land. Meanwhile, while 13 is fighting the portal villain, he instructs Ida to run towards the main UA building to inform the teachers of the villain attack and get some backup. As 13 distracts the villain, Ida escapes, running to the teacher's lounge. As Tanjiro, Deku, and Tsuyu reach the main area where Aizawa is fighting all the villains, they see the villain, covered in hands, grab a hold of Aizawa's elbow, which causes it to decay. Tanjiro then leaps in to help his master, attempting to bind the villain with his binding cloth. His efforts were no avail, however, when the villain uses his quirk to decay the binding cloth. The villain then orders the bird-based villain, which he called Nomu, to attack Tanjiro. Upon seeing the Nomu charge towards Tanjiro, Aizawa uses his binding cloth to attempt to stop the Nomu. Aizawa's efforts only proved to be a slight inconvenience to the Nomu. However, the villain shrugs it off and carries on charging towards Tanjiro. "How could he be this strong?" Aizawa exclaims. Before the Nomu could strike, Tanjiro cuts the Nomu's hands clean off while shouting, "Water breathing! 8th form! Waterfall basin!" But to everyone's surprise, the Nomu instantly regrows its hand and attempts to strike at Tanjiro once more. In reaction to the Nomu's follow-up attack, Tanjiro dodges to the side and avoids the attack by an inch. Understanding the threat the Nomu poses to the students, Aizawa yells to Tanjiro, "I'll disable his quirk. You try and immobilize him." "Understood," Tanjiro responds. Upon disabling the Nomu's quirk, Tanjiro charges at it, striking its limbs. "Water breathing! 4th form! Striking tide!" Removing all 4 of the Nomu's limbs, but right before Aizawa blinks, all 4 of the Nomu's limbs begin to regenerate. Seeing as there's no other choice, Tanjiro signals to Aizawa, who disables the Nomu's quirk for a final time before Tanjiro finishes the Nomu off by removing its head, while he shouts, "Water breathing! First form! Water surface lash!" The headless corpse of the Nomu then collapses, which leads to the villain covered in hands growing furious, charging towards Tanjiro while screaming on top of his lungs, "You killed my Nomu!" Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called We the Celestial Naruto What If. We the Celestial Naruto What If mainly focuses on our Naruto What If series. If you guys are interested in content like this, please go check on the description below or click the eye icon on the top right corner. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. Before the villain could reach Tanjiro, Deku jumps in the way and punches the villain away from him. It was at this moment when All Might arrives while yelling his signature phrase, "It's fine now. Why? Because I am here!" and leaps towards the villain. Upon seeing that All Might is here and that they no longer have the Nomu to fight All Might, the villain yells, "Kurogiri, get us out of here!" The mist-like villain, which is now known as Kurogiri, creates a portal transporting the villain out of the area. All Might leaps in to grab the villain, but was not quick enough. He then, alongside Eraserhead, apprehends the remaining villains. Not long after, the rest of the teachers arrive and assist the effort to restrain the villain. At the same time, the students are gathered outside to give the police their statement of what happened during the villain attack. Due to the villain attack, the school ended up getting shut down temporarily. During this period of time, Tanjiro and Deku would often meet up at the beach to spar with one another in order to gain greater control of their quirks and improve their ability. On the day the school finally resumed, Aizawa made a very important announcement. The UA Sports Festival is drawing near. Upon hearing the news, several students begin to get excited, mainly due to how normal it was in contrast to the prior announcement that Aizawa made. However, several students voiced out their confusion on why the school would continue to hold such a large-scale event even after the recent villain attack. Aizawa responds by telling the class that this was to show the public UA's excellent crisis management system, and he reassures the students that there will be enhanced security, which will be 5 times as tight as the prior years. Later during lunch, All Might invites Tanjiro and Deku to eat with him in the teacher's lounge, where All Might thanks Tanjiro and Deku for their work during the USJ incident. He doesn't know how bad things would have been if they weren't there at the time, with how dangerous the villains and the Nomu were. All Might also tells Deku and Tanjiro to do their best during the sports festival, as that is their opportunity to say to the world, "I am here." As the whole country will be watching the event closely, it will be an excellent chance to establish themselves as the future symbols of peace. Later that day, when it was finally time to go home, the doors of Class 1A were flooded with students of various first-year classes. Bakugo walks up to the students blocking the door and tells them, "Out of my way, extras!" This angers a boy with messy blue hair who asks Bakugo, "Are all the students in Hero Course like this?" before berating Bakugo for his actions and declaring war on the students of Class 1A. After the boy finishes speaking, he stared at Bakugo, who also stared back at him in silence. Everyone could feel the tension building up in the room before a boy with silver hair joins in, introducing himself as a student of Class 1B from the next door classroom, who tells Bakugo and the other students of Class 1A not to be full of themselves. When Bakugo decides to ignore the boy and carry on walking, the boy begins to get even more infuriated. For the coming weeks, Tanjiro and Deku would spar with one another to improve their skills and their odds of winning the sports festival. They would also try to improve their physical conditions by running on the sand of the beach, barefoot, and doing push-ups. The weeks would pass in a blink of an eye, and the sports festival would begin. While in the preparation room, Todoroki approaches Deku and Tanjiro, telling them that he thinks that he's far stronger than them, before declaring that he will beat Deku and Tanjiro in the sports festival. Tanjiro and Deku gladly accepts Todoroki's challenge, announcing that they will be giving it their all. The sports festival starts with the first years taking the stage, with President Mike introducing all the classes as they enter. Tanjiro gets invited by Midnight to come up on the stage to make the opening speech. "I hope everyone will do their best in the upcoming sports festival," Tanjiro announces. "Let us take this opportunity to show the world that they can rest easy with us being the protectors of tomorrow." Midnight then announces the first event of the sports festival, which will be an obstacle course, and explains the rules of the event and how to qualify for the next part. The race starts with Todoroki freezing the path and the feet of the students around him, giving himself a head start on the race. Several members of Class 1A see through Todoroki's plan to avoid the trap and carry on with the race. Tanjiro uses his Breath of Water's 9th technique, splashing water flow, to pass by students and minimize the contact he needed with the ground. And Deku uses One for All to leap ahead. The students reaches the first obstacle. They are encountered with several robots, similar to those used in the entrance exam. Todoroki starts off by creating a giant pillar of ice, freezing a robot in its place before running past it. As the students attempt to follow behind him, the giant robot falls in their direction, barely missing the students, with only 2 of them getting hit. The students being Kirishima and the silver-haired boy from before, whom President Mike announced to be Tetsu Tetsu, who also seemed to have a hardening quirk similar to Kirishima's. Tanjiro and Deku decide to team up, with Tanjiro cutting down the robots from the right and Deku smashing them on the left, leaving behind piles of scrap metal. By doing so, they also create a path for other students to get past the robots. When Tanjiro and Deku reaches the second obstacle, Deku throws Tanjiro across the valley. At the same time, mid-air, Tanjiro uses the binding cloth to grab a hold of Deku and uses the momentum to fling Deku across, similar to how they did in the USJ incident, getting across with ease. Noticing the binding cloth, President Mike asks Aizawa about it, in which Aizawa responds by telling President Mike that he trained Tanjiro. At last, Tanjiro and Deku reach the third and final obstacle, the minefield. They both decided to dash across. Tanjiro avoids making the mines explode by making minimal contact with the surface using his 9th technique once more. Deku blows up the mines before him using the air pressure. As they get near to the front, they notice Bakugo and Todoroki competing for one another to get first place. The boys decide to make use of the opportunity to pass them and take the lead. However, seeing Deku and Tanjiro draw near, Todoroki begins to make a path of ice to speed up, while Bakugo flies forward with his explosion. Tanjiro and Deku then decide to use their slingshot combo at the last minute, allowing them to take first and second place respectively. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now there's a few more things I'd like to go over before the video ends. I'd like to thank our Patreon supporters for helping to fund these videos. Lastly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer for this video, as well as the editors for this video. Their details will be in the description. Now if you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that is in the description of this video and hit up the heads of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit the like button if you like the video. Until next time, peace out mortals, have an amazing day.